Hello, everyone. Welcome to episode 4 of the New York Red Bulls Experience Podcast. Today I'm joined by Cristhian, Southward Network, another Red Bulls media member and content creator on Instagram and X. Super happy to have you as the third co-host in our growing list of hosts here. And yeah, it's been a crazy time in the world of New York Red Bull soccer. Last podcast was just before decision day, so there's not a whole lot of new stuff to cover. But yeah, man, how's everything? How was your decision day, and how are vibes going into the playoffs?
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thank you for having me on, man. I mean, what you're doing lately, it's like, well, you've been doing this for years, but bringing on the media members, Dan, James, they're great people, and thank you for having me, man. And for decision day, listen, I wasn't expecting to win. We know we're going against the
Yeah,
best team in the league, one of the best teams in the league. But I was surprised at the way it started. So I'm pretty sure we'll get on that. But I do have to say I'm happy that it happened now because I think it's going to help us to get ready for the next games.
yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it was a lot of. It felt very similar to how the Derby started. You have a really early goal that just sets the tone. An open header right in the middle of the box. Obviously, no good man marking there, but also Carlos Cornell, I think, should have maybe done a bit better on that goal and then the second goal as well. It kind of seemed like the floodgates were opening like they did in the Derby, but thankfully, I think the Red Bulls did definitely grow into the game. I know Columbus wasn't necessarily playing their full strength squad. Darlington Nagbe didn't even see any. I don't think he saw any minutes in the whole game. So yeah, they Wilfred Nancy, credit to him. He honestly got the team going, got the goals they needed early, and there was that quote that you posted that he said that the Red Bulls they allowed the Red Bulls to play their style for 10 or so minutes, maybe a bit more, and it resulted in what kind of seemed like it could have been a cool late comeback, and it just the sharpness to give up that third goal, just it was not there. But I will say, I think it was a really fun, crazy finish. I don't know if you felt that. You could feel it in the arena, at least from where I was in the press box. And I kind of felt like, okay, this kind of feels like a playoff game. And so we were down 2 goals, we tied it, and we're deep into 9 minutes of stoppage time, and we could get a third. And I think there was that belief. So I think that was just a cool feeling to have going into the playoffs. Obviously, the result didn't go our way, but as you said, getting it out of the way now, we learned a lot, hopefully, about Columbus because we'll be facing them 3 more times, and yeah, lots of takeaways, and we can apply it pretty quickly. So
Yeah, and I like that you mentioned. I think it was the loudest I've heard Rebel Arena this season, and we know what we were playing, who we were playing against, and I like that you touch on a few things. There was a lot of ball watching in the first 2 goals,
yeah,
and I'm gonna make sure that I put that on notice tomorrow. I have some videos up, but I definitely want to highlight things because Sandro came to the press conference, and most of the times they don't want to give you too much. But I do have to agree with the part that he said that it wasn't the structure, it was our own details, our own personal mistakes. And I highly agree because when you're playing a top team like Columbus, you got to have the mentality to go against these guys. You got to be intense. And if you paid attention, just like you mentioned, um, Felipe Carvalho and Sean Nealis, but mostly Felipe Carvalho, loses the reference of Asiel Jackson, who scored the first goal. And I think for somebody who's a holding midfielder, who's coming in as a DP, uh, in this type of moments is where we need you the most, especially leading that back line, helping the back line as a defensive midfielder. And those are the moments where I'm saying this has nothing to do with Sandro. Has to do with our own players. And maybe it's the mentality, but the coach has to do something with them um, to get them ready against a hostile environment like Columbus is. And Lower.com Field is going to be a difficult place to play. But I feel like if we come forward like we did in the second half, we're going to have better chances to actually, challenge them in the playoffs.
Yeah, and I think Emil Forsberg after the game too said a lot of it was just shoring up those mistakes and small details, and that really goes a long way. I mean, this is the team who's had, what was it, 14 draws in the whole season, and those small details result in whether it's an own goal from Noah Isla down in Orlando or a rash foul in the box. Those little things add up to just conceding one goal each game, but more often than not, it's the equalizing goal. And more often than not, that results in 2 drop points. And so you think about the accumulation of all those little details, and I think Forsberg's leadership, you've really seen it come back. I mean, he had an incredible performance in Toronto in that midweek game in his first start back from injury. And then here he has a brace. We lose the game, but involved in a beautiful goal. Taking on guys, breaking some ankles, putting that one home, and then being decisive on the penalty kick. And so you kind of feel that there is that leadership on the field again, and it's coming at the right time. But I agree with you that a lot of it is not from Sandro, and I think you can kind of feel his frustration at times that, yes, Carballo is growing into his role in central midfield, but it's just there are these acute small things that can be tweaked that can really elevate this team. And I think the beauty of it is we just played Columbus. Game 1 is on Tuesday, October 29th, so we have a bit of we have the weekend off, but going back at it against the Crew pretty quickly after decision day. And how much do you think it changes the mentality of the tactics knowing that we just played these guys like 10 days ago, as opposed to, oh my God, we faced this team mid-season and now we have to kind of figure out their tactics again and watch their film. Obviously, they're going to watch film, but, it's going to be, fresh in the mind. And so how much do you think that really changes it, if at all?
I think it's gonna depend on the players. Tactically, I think the team did try to take advantage of Columbus' mistakes, especially when they were giving the ball away. Can we finish some plays and get the ball in the back of the net? I think Hagen had amazing saves, but we had quite the opportunities to actually get on them early, and we missed them.
Yeah.
Look, I don't have a vendetta against Carlos Coronel, but I feel like that second goal, that could have been blocked, that could have been avoided. So each and every one of the players at Red Bulls have to have some accountability and have to use that to their advantage going into the next game. I think that Wilfred Nancy is playing mind games right now, telling you that there was only 10 minutes. But throughout the second half, I think there were some great movements by Cam Harper coming in the second half. I think Ronald Doncourt switching into the midfield in the second half. He was aggressive, the tackles, and everyone showed a little bit of character. I think that's what I take away the most from this game. And I think the players and the leadership of Forsberg, they can build on that. And that's why I think perhaps having Dylan Nealis back is going to help us be more organized. And we're not going to suffer as much as we did the first 20 minutes. So I think it's going to be a better outcome than what we saw in the first half against Columbus.
Yeah, and especially Dylan Nealis coming back too, because, I mean, Ronald Oncourt playing out of position at right back. I mean, that was just something when the lineup came out. I was like, okay, so are we playing with 3 at the back? Is it like a 3-5-2? And then I was like, I feel like it could be Daniel Edelman slotting back into a back 4. I feel like we've maybe seen that once. I'm not sure. But then seeing Ronald Donker playing right back, it was like, wow, we've seen Lewis Morgan play out of his natural position for a big chunk of the season. And then now we have that on the opposite side of the pitch with Ronnie there. But yeah, I also agree. Cam Harper, one of my favorite players. He always adds a spark when he comes in. And I think you really felt that deep into stoppage time. There were a few close chances or just not like super close, but charging toward goal. And like, yeah, as you said, the atmosphere was insane. And I think I want people to take that into game 2. Obviously, game 1, we have a big task at hand first. You slot Dylan Nealis right in there. Kyle Duncan's still out. So I think we will definitely be at more full strength. But yeah, I think it's the tactics obviously can only go so far. It really is the intensity. It's the playoff intensity. You'd like to think that Emil Forsberg brings that Champions League experience and mentality to this postseason competition, right? And overall, even though we haven't had a lot of deep playoff runs in the past few years, the guys on this team are basically mostly the same team besides Forsberg and Noah Isla and Carballo. I mean, every regular starter and Youngor, of course, too. Everyone else has been here before. Last year with the wild card game, the 2 games against Cincinnati, right? Do you think that getting to a 3-game series against Columbus would be a bit of a success, like grabbing 1 win against this team? Obviously, we want to advance, but I think I'm just, I'm not maybe as optimistic as you. I'm not sure, but I think if we force a 3-game series against Columbus and make it interesting and make it fun and get a win, it wouldn't be a successful end of the season, but it would be something where it's like, hey, we kind of came together. I'm not and got one against the champs. I'm not sure if you feel that way, but
well, first of all, I think you're being realistic. So sometimes I'm delusional, and I'm hoping we're gonna go.
I know
and sweep
how
them.
we engage with the fans and through our posts. We have to be positive and optimistic, but how we truly internally feel sometimes differs. So
Yeah, exactly, and that's the problem. And I feel what these probably are the questions that Sandro and his coaching staffs are asking themselves as well. Because one of the things that I can tell you is that we don't even know what our starting 11 looks like. And I think like when you're playing these type of games, the top teams are going to have their defined starting 11. And to be honest, I have question marks in regards to our lineup, especially in the midfield. You talked about Cam Harper. I feel like he's a great player, but let's say he had a great game last week against Columbus. Can he be consistent and do it again as a starter? And I think that's what I haven't seen.
Right.
Same thing with Peter Stroud. He comes back from an injury, but I'm not 100% confident that that he's at the level that we expect him to be. And then you also had the questions. What are we going to do when we play the first game? Are we going to play more defensively? Are we going to go on the counter? And I think that the dynamics and Sandro is still trying to figure it out. That's why I can be upset if we go to a 3rd game. Actually, I think, any experience is valuable. Obviously, as fans, we want them to win. We want them to win MLS Cup this year. But we have to understand that this is a process. And I think that what you can figure out now is like, okay, next year, what do I have? What are the players that are going to help me get to the next level? And these are the moments that, people got to step up. I hope that in the best case scenario, we take one out. We take it to a 3rd game. For me, if you were to ask me this, take this to penalties. All 2-3 games.
Dude, take it to penalties, and we have the experience of 2 Leagues Cup penalty kick shootouts. So, and obviously the experience of last playoffs, the experience of last year's Open Cup. We also had a shootout in Leagues Cup, or we had two in Leagues Cup. We got eliminated by Philly in the Leagues Cup on the shootout, but we won one in the group stage against New England. So we've probably had the most penalty kick shootouts in the past like calendar year than I have ever seen in my life with this club. And you have to think at some point the amount of experience doing it will pay off. This year, I mean, we've been eliminated via penalties in the past few competitions. Technically, the Leagues Cup, it was like eliminated points wise, not actually like an elimination game, but you can kind of count that as, you know, we knew if we didn't win it, we were going to go home. So I'd like to think that some of those guys, you know, Andres Reyes too, who missed one in the playoffs last year to send us home, and then I think the same thing in Leagues Cup too. His penalty was the one that got saved. So some of those guys, I mean, it sits with them, and you saw the emotions of Elias Manuel also after Leagues Cup, and I think if it went to penalties, I'd really be curious to see if this group could just really dig deep and figure out a way to just come through on top on penalties. And actually, Carlos Coronel, even though I have always had mixed feelings about him, he has shown that he is actually pretty good in penalty kick shootouts. It's really mostly been on our penalty kick takers as the reason why we haven't advanced. Carlos makes like one or two saves even. I think last year against Cincinnati he made two or three saves, something like that. And yeah, we just, you know, our takers missed more. And in that sense, I think Carlos can kind of hang in a shootout, make some saves, and it's really on our guys taking the kicks to step up. So yeah, a lot can happen. We're recording this on Wednesday, October 23rd. So last night, I don't know if you were watching, but the Montreal-Atlanta shootout. I mean, first game of the playoffs, you have a crazy game, a late comeback, penalty kick shootout. So, you know, it's anything can happen. It's going to be exciting. I want everyone to feel locked in and hyped. I don't want everyone to get their expectations overblown. So yeah, it'll be fun. It'll be a fun ride, and we're going for it. So let's pivot quickly to talking about some interesting news that came out today from The Athletic, that MLS is considering switching their schedule to a fall to spring calendar to align more closely with the rest of the world, the big leagues in Europe. Kind of seems like there might be some pressure from FIFA with some type of lawsuit or something. I don't know all the details, but it seems like it's in the works. It's being considered. It is not official. It is not happening yet. But there are ideas about it, and ideas saying that it might come as early as 2026. And so I think, I posted the picture of Red Bull Arena in the snow from the 2012 playoff series as, you know, an indicator of that would be common, not just maybe in New York, but at a lot of other stadiums around the league. It's something unique about the weather of this country. We have really extreme heat and cold and snow, and not necessarily like the climate in a country like Spain or Italy or wherever, where playing through the winter is the norm. What were your initial thoughts seeing that, and what are your hesitations, or are you excited about that prospect? Just it's interesting news to talk about today.
I will be a little bit sad because I feel like with this schedule nowadays, the season comes sooner rather than later. It's a short break that the teams have after the playoffs. Right. And I do have a question. So if we do go to this, to the European schedule or to the regular world schedule, does that mean that MLS is going to respect the FIFA breaks so that the teams can actually play with a full team? Are we going to be able to get, that probably means that we're also going to be able to catch up in the transfer windows. And a lot of
100%,
yeah, that's one of the things that people have talked about. It's like, oh, you know what? The Rebels need to sign somebody in the window. Well, the window's closed. Meanwhile, other countries in Europe are still making deals. I think that might be the beneficial point. I honestly think that we got to watch what we do with Leagues Cups as well. We play in too many tournaments, too many games. I see it as a positive, Ed, but I also see it as, well, what's so beneficial about it? And if we do have a regular transfer window, are we going to sign players this time? That's another question for joking, though.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, no, the transfer window thing is huge. I mean, that whole misalignment with the rest of the world is crazy. It's like MLS teams can't sign new players, but they can still get signed from other leagues. So it's like, that lack of alignment is crazy. To your question about the international weekends, I think it might still be a bit tricky because they were also mentioning that there might be like a 5 week break in the middle of the season from like December to February to get around the super cold months. So that just would take 5 weeks out of the schedule if they do that mid-season break. So you could still see some weekends being played on international weekends. I also think, I mean, look, the NFL plays through the winter. Fans show up. I was thinking, oh my God, like, attendance is already rough. Now tell fans, oh, you have to come out when it's like 35 degrees. I honestly think attendance would tank for sure if that is the case. It doesn't have that legacy of that the NFL has and the familiarity of you're going to football games in December, January, February, and that's what it is. But I think on paper, for all the FIFA reasons and the footballing reasons, it would be great. But I think just for the unique climate of the U.S. and for the in-person fan experience for some of the clubs that are struggling with attendance, I think it would put a damper on it to not have anything really substantial in the summer months when, a lot of people are off of work, kids aren't in school, right? So that would take a big hit. I think the alignment of the transfer windows is awesome. I think the alignment with the rest of the world is awesome. I also am curious, like, if they do switch to this, what is the transition like? Because you're going to have MLS Cup in December one year, and then you're going to start the next season in August. Is there going to be like an 8-month off season? Is there like that transition? I think is the most fascinating part of it for me. Like, how are they going to do that? Yeah, a lot of question marks. It's fun to kind of speculate now. Nothing's official, obviously, but it's something that people have been talking about for years, and it's interesting to see that it might happen. I think if I had to lean, am I for it or against it, I would say I'm slightly for it, but also hesitant. Yeah, there's a lot of questions. It's really complicated. I also get people talk about, oh, we wouldn't be competing with like the MLB playoffs for the MLS Cup playoffs. Like the MLS Cup playoffs would be in like August where there isn't really, or no, in May when there isn't as much going on in terms of other leagues having championship playoff seasons. I don't know, lots to think about, but yeah, it would be really interesting to have that switch up, like going to opening day and it's like a hot, humid August day when you're used to like being bundled up in like the first week of March. So I don't know. It'd be an adjustment, but I'm slightly in favor of it. Slightly.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're gonna adapt anyway if they do decide to change it. Maybe in the cold weather, you can have Red serving fireballs and apple ciders. I don't know.
I
but
mean, the family friendly atmosphere that Red Bull Arena has cultivated. Then you elevate that with, we're giving the kids Fireball. No, we're not the kids Fireball, but yes, yeah. No, it's I mean, I've always also been a fan of the colder games just because it either means the promise of a new season in February, March, or it means you're deep into October, November, you're making a playoff run. So sometimes the midsummer games feel a bit, not like insignificant, but it's like there isn't that weight to them. So the cold for me like brings that weight. I don't know. Maybe it would be different if it was like match 16 of the regular season and it's like December 17th. I'm not sure. Anyway, moving on. That was fun to think about all the possible permutations of how the schedule might work. We're now in our little mailbag section. I asked you guys on my story today what your high moment and low moment of the season was, the regular season. So we had a pretty broad general consensus. Cristhian, do you want to guess what the general consensus was on my story for the high and the low?
I mean, I'll go for the low, but if the low is an NYCFC, I'll tell you. For me, it was NYCFC.
Yeah, no,
Again,
you were right. That was most people said that as the low. We don't need to talk more about that. And yeah, well, what was your high, and then what do you think the high most people said was?
I think at some point beating Cincinnati was actually a very good moment where we're like, okay, we're competing against a really top team and we're playing well against them, and it gave me the confidence to feel like, all right, we can go against anybody. And I don't remember, was Frankie still there in that last game in July when we beat them 3-1?
No, he was gone.
No, right?
His last game was June 22nd against Toronto, 3-0 win at home. So yeah, he was already gone a month at that point, but he was there for the away win, obviously, which was sick. Him, all like I'm gonna miss him shutting them up at TQL, man. That was so sick, dude. I mean,
Yeah,
it happened in 2023, it happened in 2024. Just the booze rained down, and he scores a goal, and we come out on top. Yeah. So that was actually not the most common response for people's highs of the season. It was actually in the mix a lot, which I was not like surprised about, but you kind of forget, oh yeah, we did beat Cincy home and away this season, which was really sick. But no, the main high people said was the 4-0 win against Miami in the rain. Lewis Morgan, hat trick, Dante Van Zer, 4 assists. I mean, just an insane game. I was there, the crazy rainy start to the season. You even have the whole viral moment with Dante putting his jacket on, the kid in front of him and starting that chain reaction. I mean, that was just like on the field, incredible game. On the media marketing side, incredible coverage for the team. And obviously, yes, Messi wasn't playing, but it was like, hey, we beat Miami 4-0 in our house. So that was a pretty significant high, I would say. So yeah, the Cincinnati wins were like a secondary highlight for most people. Then we have a few more like interesting, unique ones that I wanted to touch on quickly. So, Andre Estevez, fan of the page or friend of the page and the podcast, he asked if he could do a more general high and low, and I was like, yeah, for sure. So his high was Dylan Nealis' improvement, which is really interesting, and then his low was John Tolkien's forum. So we can get into that. I think Dylan Nealis showed actually a lot of growth in 2023, and I was really impressed with him last season. He was out with his injury for a significant part of last season. Got a new contract, and I think he's slotted in really nicely. I think he's just really turned into a steady, dependable guy. He doesn't really put in like insane performances where you're so wowed all the time, but I think we were so wowed for the wrong reasons in 2022, his first season with us, and I think he really acclimated to the system and showed flashes of brilliance in 2023, and he's just been really stable this year. So what are your thoughts on Dylan Nealis? He's back for game 1 of round 1.
So prime Cafu, and that's how I thought of Dylan Nealis.
Hell yeah.
He's
for my generation a little bit.
Yeah, man, he's actually a really reliable player. I think that whether we need him I think last year we were using him on the left. Now he's more consistently playing on the right, and I think that he's somebody that knows how to defend well his flank. Um, I don't want to be a downer. I did see a little bit of a drop in the quality in the last couple of games,
Mm-hmm.
but not to put him on the spot. I think everybody else in the team kind of dropped their quality level just a bit. But then again, I think there is no reason to think why he's the main starter for this club. I think that earlier in the season, Sandro had mentioned that he had to have a conversation with Kyle Duncan to let him know, look, you're playing well, but Dylan is just playing a little bit better,
Mm-hmm.
and that's the reason why he's starting the games. And I think Dylan himself recognized that. He's like, no, I completely understand, and I love that man management from Sandro.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the highlights of this team so far. I think he's grown into his role. And then you mentioned John Tolkien.
Yeah, the low of his form.
You know what? I think there's a lot of things going on with John Tolkien, and his mood is completely different than that energetic, happy. He said he
Yeah.
doesn't even show up to the press conferences anymore. He doesn't
Right.
show up in the locker room interviews, and I think there's a lot of things that he probably wants to say deep down, and he doesn't get to release it, and maybe that plays with his head.
Yeah.
But I saw him against Columbus, and his quality, his game awareness is top notch. His skills on the ball is phenomenal. He's one of the most important players for our team. Maybe his role slightly changed this year, where he doesn't have that much light shown on him. But I think that he's such an important part of this team that even though we haven't seen the best of him this year, he's still an important piece for us.
Yeah. No, and I think overall for him, at least for me this season, it's just like he is less of an overtly expressive, energetic, as you were saying, player. He's kind of been more subdued personality. I think you could probably chalk that up to him wanting to make a move to Europe. He's openly expressed that. I think it's genuinely surprising that he's still on this roster. We all thought it was like his last game at home last season, the regular season. Everyone thought it was his last like home game at Red Bull Arena, and he kind of had like a whole victory lap, and everyone was like, this could very well be J-Mi's last time in New York. He's here for the entire 2024 season. I mean, yeah, I think the biggest part of the season for him was he went to the Olympics and had what seemed to be a really great time and great experience for him, and I think that was like a big crowning moment for him, and I think did wonders for his confidence. But yeah, just more understated season, but overall still a super important piece to this team. Yeah, I mean, I don't really see like that he hasn't. I mean, he even had like a Bundesliga club offering him some contract in the summer, and we've turned those down for years. But yeah, if Europe comes knocking it in the off season, I think this would definitely be the time to offload him and move on. And I think that's honestly totally fine at this point. If we see John Tolkien in 2025, I don't know, man. I feel like his ego would. I feel like he wouldn't be happy to be here, and it sucks because I want all our players to want to be happy here all the time. But I think he's just ready for that next challenge and next step. And yeah, I think maybe a playoff run would hopefully make him play with a bit more heart. But yeah, I think overall I'm not like as much of a hater on his form as some other fans have been this season. So still a stable player, just not as energetic and out there as he was in previous years. The hair is still very much out there though, which is fun. Another one, Rowan Alex Weller. I think he knows my opinion on Carlos a little bit. So he said that his high was Carlos being out on international duty, so Ryan Mera could slot in. And like, look, I think Carlos is okay. I think he's definitely taken a dip in his form this year. I think this has got to be the season with his least amount of clean sheets since he arrived here. Obviously, that's a big testament to the defense and not just the goalkeeping. But I did think it was nice to see Ryan Mera get some moments. Unfortunately, Carlos was out of the rotation with Paraguay, so even though he gets called up He didn't play a single minute in Copa America, and I kind of feel for him. I think it would have been great to see him on that stage. Um, but look, I mean, just on a purely Red Bulls level, purely nostalgia, childhood Luca level, Ryan Mayer is my favorite player on the team. He's been here since I was in fourth grade. I mean, anytime he's on the field, I just love seeing him. And I think he had like 3 clean sheets. So, and he's played like 4 or 5 games. So, I mean, that was a high for me. Just it's nice seeing Ryan get more minutes. I think it also does a lot more to his confidence for when he needs to slot in. If he's slotting in for 3, 4, or 5 games a season versus one-off weird game that Carlos isn't there, it just is a lot better for him. And I think he's great. He has a contract option for this year, for next year rather. I hope they pick it up. Yeah, I've been rambling a lot, but what are your thoughts on Carlos, international duty, Ryan Mera, the goalkeeping experience for the Red Bulls this year?
Well, first of all, I think Ryan Mara is a club legend. And even if you have to sign him, even if you have to sign him for another year, sign him, and he's going to be coaching with the club. I think he's somebody who that locker room experience, that locker room management. You need a player like that on your team. In terms of Carlos, I think a perfect example of what's happened with him this year is last game against Columbus, because I saw at half times a player that can make fantastic saves, that's reliable. And then at other times I saw a player who, like you said, has dipped in his form. And I just think it's more of the confidence, the mentality, the body language is just not there.
The body language for sure.
Yeah, you see a guy who's who last year, I remember him leading his team all the time in every play, screaming out, making sure everybody's set and organized. I don't see that. I don't see that this year, and maybe has to do something that he's been dropped as a number 2 with Paraguay. Now it's 2 coaches in a row who don't trust him in the number 1 position. That has to hit you, and I think that's something that needs to be worked on. Maybe it's too late for now, but throughout the season and during the break, he's definitely going to have to take a look at that.
Yeah, no, and even with the fact that he's vice captain, and you saw when Emil Forsberg and Sean Niels were both out, he wore the armband obviously, but then a few games Daniel Edelman was wearing it, and obviously Daniel Edelman said, "Oh, Carlos was very open about wanting me to have it," but like I wonder if there's anything in the background there about why Daniel's getting the armband over Carlos. Not to like have any conspiracies or anything, but yeah, I kind of agree with you. I think his leadership has dipped a little bit. On paper, it's improved with his vice captaincy, but yeah, I just want a vocal presence in the back. We obviously had that with Luis Robles. I feel like that is very much missed this season, and yeah, just something to think about for next season about that holistic leadership. Big expectations for Sandro, like carrying this group over to next season and seeing how leadership all over the pitch can really develop. All right, and the final unique take was VTX Vic saying that his low was the loss to Chicago. And I thought that was an interesting one because I was thinking about it and I was like, that wasn't a super crazy loss. It wasn't 5-1. It wasn't our first loss at home in what was an unbeaten season. But thinking about it, I was like, yeah, that loss was pretty annoying. And it was basically a loss for me that obviously you have the moment of another one of our former players scoring on us, Tom Barlow. His first goal with the Fire, and of course it comes against the Red Bull. I mean, it's just, how often does this happen? Like, this has to be some stat, like record, whatever. The Red Bulls must have the record of former players scoring on them. It's crazy. So that was, of course, crazy. And then it was also defined by Noah Isla, backwards header that just fully given away. And I think, honestly, that loss was a bit of a microcosm of, you have the young, inexperienced players. You have Noah Isla, young center back, obviously so much great potential. super composed on the ball, great vision going forward. But then you've seen those lapses from him, and it's very consistent for young players to have that, and it's natural. But you just can't help but think, like, man, like some of these games we could have gotten a point or three if like those little moments didn't happen. I think another thing, I don't know how you feel about this, but I feel like there has been way too much playing around the back this season and a lack of a willingness to just go forward. And more often than not, they're passing back to Carlos. Obviously, we know what happened in the Derby, how those first few goals were scored, just terrible giveaways, whether it's in your own box, in midfield. So, yeah, me speaking now was kind of me going through the whole mental process I went through when I saw VTX Vic here talking about the loss to Chicago. I just went down that rabbit hole of that chain reaction. So, yeah, just would love to hear your thoughts on any of the 27 things I just mentioned.
No, those are great points. I think that it shows the inconsistency of this team, because if you were to ask me that no ago, I had erased it from my memory, but you brought it back now. Thanks for that. But it is it's an amateur play, because he's headed it instead of hitting it on the side. He's doing it right in the middle. I personally think that those are the growing pains that we're gonna suffer with young talent like the ones that we have today. But if I had the choice to pick my two center backs to go against Columbus, call me crazy, but it will be Andres Reyes and Noah Eiler.
Mm-hmm.
These are the two players that I would, because he gives you so much when he's on the ball.
100%.
That's missing sometimes, and he's not afraid to take those challenges. He's not afraid to go up and drive the ball himself, and he's actually very alert when it comes to defending. He's always the game awareness is high, and I can forgive him for that. But I do see where Vic mentioned the low points, and then Tom Barlow, he doesn't score at all, but he scores against us. You really think to yourself, like, man, we must be in this bad position that we even let Barlow score. But much love to him. What a professional, right?
No,
he didn't celebrate. I don't think, right?
No, he didn't celebrate. I mean, I'm not going to talk about Tom Barlow that much, but like toward the end of his time at the Red Bulls, I just put my fan part of me aside, and I was like, you know what, this is just funny. Like, it's just pure entertainment seeing this guy run around. And when he does score, he had 2 goals in the playoffs last year, and it was just super funny, and I loved it. And he's just a funny guy. But yeah, Noah Eilert last week, James Burley said that he didn't like. James said he hadn't seen a player with the vision that Noah Eilert had since, or center back rather, that Noah Eilert has since like Tim Ream. So, I mean, just going off of James's assessment, I mean, that's 13, 14 years without a creative playmaker center back. So I think that's really cool, and he's gonna blossom into a great center back for this club. I think it would be interesting to see Reyes in the back four there. I think Sean Nealis I've been a bit less impressed with slightly this season, which is super unfortunate to say. Obviously, he also was out with injury stuff. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see the lineup for next Tuesday. It's gonna be a big one. So yeah. Tuesday, or do you have anything else to say?
Yeah, before I forget, I'm sorry, because I did have it in the back of my head.
Oh, yeah.
And I talked about it with the other guys. We got to stop playing backwards. That's 100% true, man.
Yeah.
I rewatched the game yesterday, and even in transition moments, there were times where Peter Stroud was passing the ball back, turning and going backwards. But that's not even our style.
It's such a waste.
Wasting opportunities. There's 2 things we need to do. First, we need to stop playing backwards. The second one, play with your forwards. Dante Vanzeir was open multiple times, and instead of making the right decision, they go where there's more traffic. I don't understand. It's just, seriously, play simple, stop playing backwards. stop making silly mistakes. Those are the keys for to beat Columbus.
Yeah. You said it. You said it best, my friend. I love it. Yeah. Just fix the small mistakes. Be a bit like take healthy risks. Like play in an ambitious way. Don't play too safe, but don't think that you can't create a moment of magic out of nothing. Because this team has shown that they can create moments of magic. Sometimes I feel like they're too afraid to really attempt it. So, yeah, it's going to be an interesting one. MLS Cup Playoffs run for the Red Bulls starts Tuesday, October 29th at 6:45 p.m., a weird start time. But it'll be fun. Can the Red Bulls emerge victorious? As a reminder, if it is tied at the end of regulation, it'll go straight to penalty kicks. So there's that interesting element to it. Big expectations. We lost there 3-0 in the beginning of the season, but I think the boys, and especially Sandro, have learned a lot since then. They just faced this team last week. We get Dylan Nealis back. We're basically close to full strength. We're only missing Kyle Duncan and Rold Mitchell unless anything goes wrong, knock on wood. That will be full strength. And anything can happen. Metro playoff fever, catch it. Yeah, the past 14 seasons, it's been the same song stuck on repeat. It'll probably be the same song this year. But you just really can't stop believing with this team. We get at least 2 more, hopefully 3, hopefully more games of soccer this season. And, yeah, you never know what can happen. So, Cristhian, anything to leave off on?
Yep, belief. I think playoffs brings a different environment. It is a different dynamic. There's more intensity, so I do believe it's gonna be a good match. Lastly, I'm just gonna say draw in Columbus, win it in PKs, and we take it home here at on Sunday. So I think I'm extremely positive. I don't know what you did to me, Luca, but I'm extremely positive
Hell
about
yeah.
this.
And yeah, everyone better show up Sunday, November 3rd, 4:30 p.m. Let's pack it. It's an early start time. Everyone complaining about, the 7:30 kickoffs. This is your time. It's a Sunday game, 4:30, different time. Show up. Let's pack the place. Let's bring it and bring that spirit of, we basically had a fortress this whole season. We had an awful loss in the derby, but we basically had a fortress, and bring it for game 2, and hopefully we have a game 3, or maybe we wrap it up in 2 games and go on to the conference semifinals. Probably not. But yeah, anyway, it's been Luca from the Red Bulls Experience, Cristhian from Southward Network. Follow Southward Network on Instagram and X, and we're going to hopefully be bringing you some of the best MLS Cup Playoffs content for your favorite New York Red Bulls. So see you guys hopefully on the other side of a positive round 1 series.